We're getting stories here. We're getting stories about how one can be many. We're getting stories which explain the apparent multiplicity that's going on around us is actually only the one thing. Now, of course, this is a bit of a problem, and it's not just common to Hinduism. The Christians should really answer the question: why did God create the universe? Well, because He was lonely. He wanted to be worshipped. Anyway. The problem isn't really a problem at all, though, because this dichotomy of one and many is a construct. It's a construct of our cognitive process. Both are valid ways of looking at things. You can think of everything as one or as everything as many. But the trick is to get beyond that process to that way of splitting things up. And it's when you get beyond that way of splitting things up that you think, yes, everything is one. It's not that everything comes together as one. You realize that there's only one consciousness. One intelligence, and it doesn't make any sense to speak of it as many consciousnesses or as many intelligences. So what we're getting here in the Yoga Vasistha is stories that try to explain this apparent multiplicity with the experience of oneness, or just one. And I think it's a good idea not to try and think of this as an explanation, but to try and get a sense of where this is coming from. It's not trying to paper up the cracks in a dodgy philosophy. It's about trying to express something which cannot be expressed in concepts or notions. And so if you look upon it as trying to explain something, it must ultimately fail. The explanation is ultimately unsatisfactory. But if we've touched that oneness at some point, then what we've got here is a reminder of it. No matter what the explanations are about or how they're couched, what we need to do is get behind the words to where the words are coming from, really. Vasistha continued, "In the Supreme Being there exists a vibration which is at once equilibrium and disturbance. On account of this there appear space and light and inertia, though they have not really been created." So here the basic dichotomy, the basic problem, if you want to call it that, is being expressed between equilibrium and disturbance. And it gets round it by saying there's a vibration in the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being isn't some sort of static entity wrapped up in its own bliss. It's something which is doing something, and what it's doing is, we could describe as a totality of experiencing. So it's at once equilibrium and disturbance in the same way. At the same time, it is both one and many. And there appears space, light and inertia. although these things haven't really been created, they're a way of looking at things, they're a way of applying the cognitive process. But space, light and inertia. Space is what we need to contain things. Light is what we need so that things become apparent. And inertia, I think, could be the resistance of things. It's what gives things their apparent solidity. So these are notions. I'm wondering what the current philosophical thinking is about space and time, what the physicists and what the philosophers are saying, and if anybody's got any comments about that, I'd be happy to see them. As far as I know, space and time from the Western philosophical point of view are regarded as adjuncts or constructs of the senses. Space and time don't actually have any objective existence. I'm not talking about Hinduism here, Hindu cosmology. I'm not talking about Yoga Vasistha. I'm not an expert in Western philosophy, but I think it was David Hume, I won't even try and attempt his dates, but space and time were regarded as not having any objective existence. They're actually what could be described as the organising principle of the senses. Yes, so if anybody's got any comments about that, I'd be interested to know. But anyway, if that's the case, it certainly fits in with what's being said here in the Yoga Vasistha. So space, light and inertia, or as I might understand that, I think resistance, have not really been created. They're just simply notions. There are ways of looking at things. There are ways of categorizing the experiencing. Since all this happens in consciousness, they possess the quality of the knowable. At the same time there arises the knower. So now we have the cognitive process going on to the distinction between what is knowable, and if there's something that is knowable, then there must be a knower. And that can only happen because of consciousness. It is the inherent power of consciousness to illumine all things. Hence it is the cosmic knower. Everything that's going around, it uses the word illumine, but that seems to apply strictly to visual things. I think that illumine means in the sense to bring into awareness. So it could be a sensation, although it tends to be the visual sensations that dominate. And if they weren't illumined, we wouldn't see them. The fact is that they're here. Their suchness is apparent, and I think it's in that sense that the inherent power of consciousness illumines all things. It brings things to light. And things are brought to light, I think that's quite a good expression, because we're not talking necessarily about visual things when something comes to light. That consciousness itself becomes its own knowable and the knower. When such a relationship arises, the notion I am a jiva, or living soul, arises in consciousness.